Welcome back to SelfiGaming. Here, SelfSustained, coming back with yet another how-to on how to set up your priest, this time for Shadow, the priest's only damage specialization. So, start off to let you know, Shadow is overall a medium, maybe a little higher than medium, so not the greatest damage dealer in the game, but mid-range, maybe a little bit better at single target. With a little higher AoE damage capabilities. The cool thing about shadow damage is that as a shadow priest, the rotation is fairly easy to learn and fairly easy to master. So let's begin with talents. In talents, as you can see how I've set up, go through these tier by tier. I'll scroll over each talent, allow you the ability to pause the video and read into greater detail. But short and sweet, here we go. Angelic Bulwark. When you attack below 30%, when an attack brings you below 30% health, you gain a passive shield equal to 50% of your max health. Happens once every 90 seconds. Spectral Guise. Your shadow blurs into the darkness, leaving your true form behind. As a shadow, you are stealth, but remain in combat. Lasts 6 seconds or until true form is hit by 3 direct attacks. And the one I'm currently using is Desperate Prayer, which nice little self heal that's an oh crap, if you will. You know, I'm just about to die. Oh crap, let me keep myself alive a little bit longer. In tier 2 at level 30, you can choose between Phantasm, which activates a movement speed increase when you use your Fade ability, which I don't use very often. Angelic Feather, which allows the placement of Feather, which increases movement speed for whoever picks it up. Which, again, I find to be kind of hit and miss, but it'd probably be better than Body and Soul, which I'm currently using. Luckily, in Shadow, when you're playing Shadow, I guess, Shadow form is a must at all times, as it increases shadow damage by 25% and your armor by 100%. The problem with it is most of your healing spells will kick you out of it, and you don't want that. Luckily, and this is why Body and Soul seems to work, because Power Word Shield and Leap of Faith do not remove you from Shadow. So you still get that movement increase without losing your shadow form. Very nice. In tier 3 at level 45, you can choose between Insanity, which consumes your shadow orbs and transforms Mind Flay into a new ability called Insanity, and Mind Sear into a new ability called Searing Insanity, which for 1.84 seconds per orb consumed, they will change into those abilities. Those abilities deal 100% additional damage to their respective counterparts. The other ability here, or the other talent you can choose, would be Mind Bender, which grants the improved version of Shadow Fiend for better pet damage and generates more mana. The one I'm going with is Surge of Darkness. Basically allows your Vampiric Touch and Devouring Plague 12% chance to cause your next Mind Spike to not consume the dots, to be an instant cast, and deals 50% additional damage. And this Surge of Darkness can accumulate up to 3 charges. Very nice to know. Next here at level 60, you can choose between Dominate Mind, which controls a mind of a level 103 character for 30 seconds. It does not work versus mechanicals and shares diminishing returns with other incapacitating effects. Interesting in certain situations, not for the most part that I'll be using. Void Tendrils is the other option, which, as I've discussed in the Discipline Priest Guide, what it does is it allows an area to, or you cast on an area that summons shadowy tendrils rooting up to 5 enemies within that 8 yards for 20 seconds or until killed. Until the tendril, that is killed. What I'm using this time in shadow form is Psychic Scream. It's an instant cast that I can hit once every 30 seconds if I need. And what it does is it it lets out a psychic scream, causing 5 enemies within 8 yards to flee. May also be interrupted by getting damaged, so that's something to look out for. You don't want to dot them up and then send them fleeing, for the flee won't last its full extent probably. In the next tier of talents, you've got Shadowy Insight, which basically allows your Shadowward Pain damage over time, and Mind Spike damage, a 5% chance to reset the cooldown on Mind Blast, which is very nice since Mind Blast is your big damage dealer. And it also makes it instant. So it's a kind of a touch-up between the two, but I actually stuck with Power Infusion for that ability to choose when it happens, as opposed to it being more of a almost random at a 5% chance is almost a random proc. The other one there could have been Twist of Fate. There again, though, Twist of Fate is one of those that the target has to be at below 35% health for you to increase your damage by 15% for 10-second periods. Again, whereas they're already at 35% health, unless you're going against a big boss that has a lot of health points, they're not going to last much longer. So it has very minimal opportunity to be used. The next tier, you have the choice between Cascade, which launches Shadowy Bolt that grows in power with distance, damaging up to almost 8,000 damage, and then bouncing to additional enemies up to 4 times. With each bounce, it splits into 2 bolts, and it doesn't damage the same target twice. It's nice to know about that last section there. The other option would have been Divine Star, which shoots a Divine Star forward, damaging enemies in its path. After reaching its destination, it turns around and comes right back to me, again damaging all enemies in its path. The one I chose this time was Halo. Creates a ring of shadow energy that quickly expands and grows in power up to 30 yards, dealing quite a bit of damage to enemies with the greatest effect at 25 yards. And last but not least, the final tier, when you hit level 100, you can choose between Clarity of Power, which makes your Mind Spike, Mind Seer, and Shadowward Death deal 40% additional damage to targets not affected by your Shadowward Pain or Vampiric Touch. Also reduces the cooldown on Mind Blast by 3 seconds and makes it an instant cast. Basically, the 7th tier of talents for a Shadow Priest essentially creates 3 very different sub-specs, if you will. Meaning, if you chose Clarity of Power, you're going to have a completely different play style than if you had Auspicious Spirits or if you had Void Entropy. So with Clarity of Power, it's basically it's almost a dotless play. It increases your DPS on all your single targets so that you don't have to worry about going back with global cooldowns on Shadowward Pain and Vampiric Touch. So it essentially gets to the point where you don't need your damage over times as much to do sustainable damage. Another option here was Void Entropy. Basically what it does is consumes your orbs and deals a large amount of damage over time. That's a 1-minute dot. The Devouring Plague will refresh this effect, which is nice to keep going. You know, if every time the Devouring Plague procs you hit Devouring Plague, you're essentially keeping that Void Entropy dot up and going constantly. It'd be interesting to play with. Personally, I haven't even attempted it yet, so I'm not real sure how well that works. What I liked about this one here, Auspicious Spirits, the passive ability is always nice. It keeps from spinning another global cooldown. Your Shadowy Apparitions deal 100% increased damage and grant Shadow Orbs, which basically tells me that Auspicious Spirits, I should not have any lack of Shadow Orbs, allowing me to do all my nice big damage dealing abilities. So I stuck with that one. On the Glyphs side, there's really only one major glyph to worry about, and that is Glyph of Reflective Shield. Glyph of Reflective Shield causes 70% of the damage you absorb with your Power Word Shield to reflect back at the attacker. And it's with no threat even. That's pretty cool. It definitely helps tremendously. Basically everything they're doing to you, 70% of it's doing to themselves. Very helpful. Other than that, there's a lot of good viable options for glyphs, but the ones I chose were Mind Harvest, which the first time you damage an enemy with Mind Blast, you gain 2 orbs, even though it increases the cooldown of Mind Blast by 6 seconds. The other one I chose was Mind Spike, Glyph of Mind Spike. Your successful non-instant Mind Spikes reduce the cast time of your next Mind Blast within 9 seconds by 50% and stacks up to 2 times. Nice in conjunction with the 2, so even though this one increases the cooldown by 6 seconds, I have a pretty decent chance that I'm going to be getting it at 50% cooldown, or 9 seconds off of that cooldown anyhow. So, all in all, I think it'll be alright. Excuse me. As far as general rotation in a single target atmosphere or encounter would be like so. Priority is Devouring Plague is above all. If you have 3 orbs, you should be hitting Devouring Plague. If you have less than 5 orbs, Mind Blast becomes second priority, which you can only hold 5 orbs, so unless you are capped on orbs, you should be hitting Mind Blast. Shadow Word Death if the target is at 20% or below. Shadow Word Death, as it states here, the enemy has to have less than 20% health, but it does a lot of damage, so it takes priority at that point. You always want to double tap it unless you have the 5 orbs, because Shadow Word Death actually grants a Shadow Orb. So if they're at 20% health or less, hit that sucker twice. Get you 2 orbs, and possibly kill your mob, depending on if it's a boss or not. If it's a boss, probably not. Next in priority would have been Insanity, though I did not spec for Insanity, so it doesn't bother me any at all. Beyond that was Mind Spike, and that's because I'm using Surge of Darkness. Mind Spike becomes that much more dangerous because it doesn't take off the dot. It becomes instant and deals 50% additional damage whenever Surge of Darkness procs, that is. Beyond that, it's just your standard dots, your Shadow Word Pain, and then Vampiric Touch, which I have Vampiric Touch on a macro, so in order to see that, I'll just bring it up to Spellbook. Then, if you've got Shadow Word Pain and Vampiric Touch, and Mind Blast is on cooldown, they're not at 20% health, and it's just the one target, you can always hit Mind Flay. That's kind of a filler. Basically, it's a channeled spell that's going to do damage over time while you're channeling it. And it also slows them, keeps them from you a little bit if you're soloing. Excuse me. Now, in the sense of AoE damaging, if you're in a situation where you have just 2 or 3 targets, maintain your single target rotation. Do just like you would if you had one person. About the only thing you have to worry about is maybe go ahead and drop the Insanity or Mind Spike, and just stick with the rest of the rotation. The priority list stays true. If you have 4 or more targets, then about the only difference, again, you stay with the same overall priority, but instead of using Mind Flay as your filler, you're going to use Mind Sear as it's your AoE damager. Your other AoE damager is Halo, which I spec'd for, which would be nice. Bam, like so. Nice little ring. Let me get rid of this and try that again. In, I guess, 35 seconds. In the meantime, I can go ahead and tell you the cooldowns to keep in mind. One is Shadow Fiend. Your Shadow Fiend, where you at there, buddy? There it is. Creates the little fiend to attack. Oh, doggone it. To attack the target and last 12 seconds. I infused that in my Voodoo buff watch, so it's up here for me. I can just click in this area, and there's my Shadow Fiend. But I'm not in the need of it at the moment, so it won't let me do it. The next cooldown would be Dispersion. Dispersion basically turns you into pure shadow energy, reducing all damage taken by 90%, though you're unable to attack or cast spells. It can be cast while stunned, feared, or silenced. It clears all movement impairing effects and makes you immune to them while you're dispersed for the next 6 seconds. And last but not least, another cooldown to know is Vampiric Embrace. Fills you with the embrace of shadow energy, causing you and your allies to be healed for 10% of any single target shadow spell damage you deal. It's AoE heals. Basically, it's a survivability, if you will, as well as helps the rest of the group if you're in group. Now, with that said, I can show you Halo again as a damage spell. Bam! Pretty sweet. Either way, I don't really mess with Shadow too much. Like I stated in the Disciplined Priest, I am more fond of the Discipline rotation and playstyle. So I don't really mess with Shadow too much. In fact, now that I'm max level and at 100, the only time I'll go back to Shadow is if guild or raid requires it. With that, I'm going to go ahead and finish this video. I do appreciate the attention here at SelfiGaming. As always, if there's anything that you seen to be inaccurate or any other comment you'd like to make, please let me know down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to show some love. Hit that like button. And if this is your first time to the channel, by all means, subscribe if you haven't already to this channel. It keeps you up to date with all the new content as I upload it, and I will be uploading quite regularly, so hope to see you again. Thanks. Take her easy.